Do you ever have that moment when you wake up and you're not worried about anything? Where, for a brief moment after you open your eyes, your mind is free of any troubles, as though your memories have been erased and things have been reset? When I've been through some dark times, I've relished that moment. No financial issues, no family problems, no impending threats, and no stress. It's a blissful few seconds, but it never lasts very long because the gears in your head start turning quickly enough to remind you of reality. You remember that things are a bit of a mess, both for you and everyone else. Some of it you can do something about, some of it is completely out of your control, and that lack of control can be infuriating. It's enough to make a person stay under the covers and fall back asleep just so you can forget again. I'll take a quiet life, a handshake of carbon monoxide. I remember when I moved to the US back in 2016, the same year that Trump got elected president. I and almost everyone else thought that it wouldn't be possible for him to become president. After months of following the election cycle and learning more and more about this clown of a man, the thought of someone like Trump reaching one of the highest offices in the world just seemed absurd. Surely the American people won't fall for this, right? Surely they know enough not to drink his snake oil and smile while they gulp it down. Well, it turns out we all got a bit too complacent because on election night the results kept coming in, and the more we learned, the bleaker it felt. At one point, it became clear that all the pundits were wrong, and statisticians like Nate Silver were a bunch of frauds. My wife and I started to feel despair well in the pits of our stomachs because the future was now uncertain. An unexpected cultural shift had happened, and even though there were warning signs it was going to happen, we told ourselves that it wouldn't. Like many other people, we were in a bubble, and we didn't see the needle creeping closer and closer. That night, with the assistance of anxiety medication, I fell asleep, and I woke up that morning greeted by that beautiful but fleeting blissful ignorance. And I'll never forget how, when it dissolved, I remembered what happened the night before, and my need to avoid reality was so strong. I thought to myself, last night was a dream, right? 8 years later, Americans got to do this all over again. But during those years, I think people have come to expect the worst. Oscar Wilde once said that there are only two tragedies in life. One is not getting what you want, and the other is getting it. With all due respect to Mr. Wilde, rest in peace, I think he might have been off the mark then, but I can't blame him since he didn't live during a time where your racist neighbor Kevin was capable of shaping national policies with a single Facebook post. It was hard to feel any hope during this past US election, even from the start. I remember when the first debate was aired and the second-hand embarrassment I felt from watching two geriatric sundowning men, Biden and Trump, constantly stumbling over their words and thoughts, incapable of following through with any question, rambling on like your grandpa at a holiday dinner, telling us all how they're going to use their smarts to make the world a better place for everyone. This is a joke, right? Like, these two should be in bed right now, but here they are telling millions of Americans that they deserve their vote, and when they could string together a coherent sentence, all it really amounted to was, "I'm not as bad as the other guy." People didn't need to be reminded of that though. American elections have always been about voting for the lesser of two evils. No one can truly be enthusiastic about exercising their right to vote when all they're really doing is trying to mitigate damage, like using a sheet of paper to slow down a speeding bullet. It was bad. Truly bad, and I don't blame anyone for thinking that we were doomed if these two were our only options. Both of them are so old that they won't live long enough to see the long-term effect of their policies. It's like someone cranking up the TV volume too loud and then leaving the room and taking the remote with them. They don't have to stick around, but now you've got to get up off your ass and fix the problem. Biden dropped out after his own party reminded him that he's 82 years old. I assume he forgot. and suggested that he spends his twilight years watching Wheel of Fortune and Law and Order reruns. After he stepped down, the Democrats chose Kamala Harris as his replacement. She may have been the current vice president, so to many, she might have been the most obvious choice, but in a country full of racists and sexists, it's safe to say that many Americans weren't enamored with the idea of voting for a woman of color. Okay, maybe that wasn't the only reason the Democrats lost, but it's safe to say that it contributed to it. For 4 years, they coasted on the premise of them being the lesser evil, and in a time where people need more radical changes, they didn't do enough to remind people why they were worth your vote. I'll admit that I have more privileges than most people, given that I'm a white-skinned man, but all I really got out of their tenure was 4 years of waking up each morning without having to see what new acts Trump's circus was bringing to town. It was nice to have a break, but eventually you have to return to reality, and in this case, the reality is that a country like America deserves a leader like Trump, because he represents all of the country's worst virtues. Liberal figures in politics on the news like to claim that America is better than this, but they're wrong. Trump is America, a greedy, self-absorbed, self-righteous loudmouth who loves to tell everyone that they're the best and can only get ahead by stepping on the feet of others. A thug in an expensive tuxedo that will happily shoot at your feet to make you dance for their amusement. A criminal one in a country that's happy to send criminals to their death. So, here we go again. Another 4 years of hell being funneled directly into your newsfeed every morning. Another 4 years of savoring those brief, wonderful waking moments before reality hits and hoping that things don't get worse. We all get another stay in the "this is fine" room, watching the flames climb up the walls, hoping that someone will knock on the door and give you a fully charged fire extinguisher. My world's on fire. How about yours? I don't really like it. Now I'm getting bored. One word comes to mind when I think of this: futility. Now, I'm a permanent resident here, not a citizen, so I don't get to vote, even though I live here. Stupid, I know, but whatever. As Emma Goldman once said, if voting changed anything, then they'd make it illegal. I try not to be so cynical myself, but she may have a point when it comes to American elections. Voting is supposed to be one of the most powerful tools the public has to make positive change, and this is basically true. Your voice may be tiny in the context of an election, but it has more sway than something like a tweet, unless it's Kevin. Votes don't feel like enough anymore, though. Too much needs to be done, and by waiting 4 years to hopefully be heard doesn't really cut it when there's so much at stake. You never know what will come next, how things will change for the worst, and you're not even sure who to trust anymore. The future teaches us to be alone, the present to be afraid and cold. Things need to be done now. The lives of women, people of color, trans people, and the poor are at risk, and they don't have the luxury of waiting. Time is for the privileged few who don't have to worry too much about what tomorrow will bring. How long would you want to wait when you're stuck in a room with a ticking time bomb? Just go back to bed and cover your head with a pillow. When a bomb ticks in your bedroom but it can't be heard, does it really exist? The popularity of politically charged content has become a useful tool for bringing attention to a variety of social issues. It's found its way into millions of people's feeds as digestible TikTok bites, 280-character-long snippets, hearty YouTube video essayists, and lengthy live streams hosted by people who seem to have a wealth of knowledge on global politics. It makes sense though. Traditional news outlets have become an inefficient, inconvenient method of receiving information, unless you're retired and have all the time in the world to hear it from the mouth of a news anchor. School and work can be exhausting, so bite-sized information is convenient for the person on the go. Do what you need to do, let the algorithm decide for you, and just absorb. I'm not criticizing you for this though, and I'd be a hypocrite if I said that I wasn't part of this cycle. Being informed is important. It's part of a healthy diet when consumed in moderation, but poisonous when you overindulge. I think it's great that online content has helped so many people understand what needs to be fixed, but given the state of things, I also think it's instilled a sense of powerlessness in us, something that feels all the more potent when information is served without a side of solutions. You get to hear about the problems, but you're just left there aimless, desperate to right the wrongs of the world, angry at how it got this bad. Despite all your rage, you're still just a rat in a cage. Somewhere along the way, though, people started believing that the act of consuming content and spreading it around is the same as taking action. That if something gets in front of enough eyes and ears, then surely something will change. And that the collective power of the internet will inspire something good to happen. It's an admirable effort for sure, but that's not how the internet works. That's not how the way the world works. Algorithms are designed to make you feel like a powerful, well-informed, highly engaged individual whose actions on social media amount to something great. You say or share something that's important, it gets seen by a bunch of people, maybe someone important, and suddenly you feel like it's worth it. They're seeing what needs to be seen, and someone out there with more clout and power will finally do something. Here's where that pesky cynicism kicks in, no, or reality, whatever you want to call it. It's not action, it's words within an echo chamber, being bounced around and parroted by other people who care. Social media makes you feel powerful because it surrounds you with people who are willing to offer you power and want power in return. What's said there rarely escapes the walls of the echo chamber, but with enough likes and reposts, it's easy to be convinced that what's been said has been heard across the world, and the odds of things changing suddenly climbs drastically. A pleasant lie, like a pat on a child's head from a parent who's proud of them just for trying to draw a horse. Did you draw that yourself? Let's put that on a fridge. I promise you, I'm trying to not be cynical here, just realistic. I know it doesn't feel very good, I don't like it either, and I should probably just go back to bed. Oh, how'd I get here? Actually, come to think of it, we find ourselves thinking that a lot these days. How did we get here? I'm sure it's a question people have been asking for hundreds, if not thousands of years now. Everything always seems to get worse, and we somehow never see it coming. There are so many brilliant minds out there who are able to properly analyze the present and the past, but times being what they are, it's become impossible to predict what comes next. So the best we can do now is react or watch other people react to stuff so we can make some sense of things, or perhaps even borrow someone's opinions to pass off as your own in an online argument. You know the type, the person who pays for Discord Nitro just so they can make use of the increased character limit. The type who suspiciously sounds like a number of notable online pundits when they talk. I don't want to undermine people's efforts to stay informed by paying attention to what people have to stay online, but as time has gone by, I've started to develop less faith in internet discourse. Earlier on, I felt like it was a vehicle for positive change, and in some ways, it is, at least on an individual level. But when an algorithm herds you into a group of like-minded people who are all attempting to belong peacefully with each other and not rock the boat with a dissenting opinion, I don't think anything can really be achieved other than a consensus. And even then, that often gravitates around figures who facilitate these discussions. Online discourse has become like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. I've spoken about this in the past, but it also doesn't help when a personality's only goal is to get people pissed off about something until the next thing comes along. People know there's a million reasons to be angry, but they're always looking for a target, even if that target has no meaningful bearing on them personally or even the lives of others. This format is fueled more often than not by reacting to content, like an article or a video that a person with an audience believes will rile up their followers enough to eventually come back for another dose, get them angry and send them on their way to unleash that anger via tweets and comments. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it isn't, but when it is, someone else with an audience sees it and decides to start feasting on the sloppy seconds, trying their best to keep the spark of anger alive, aspiring to outdo the outrage generated by their predecessor. Once they've chewed up that anger and regurgitated it into the ears of their minions, they send them off with renewed vigor. Travel to social media, my minions, and fight the good fight. Use your precious time on this earth to harass a stranger on the internet. Make your parents proud. Still, there are people out there with genuinely noble intentions, and I won't belittle their efforts to make the world a better place. It's the people who see real injustice and want others to share their concerns and fears. They want to be heard even though everything they say in real life falls on deaf ears, and they absolutely do deserve to be heard. I just think that at this point we need to do more than just talk. Words are just air, or data in this case. Action is what matters, and social media has made people forget this. Obviously, not everyone out there is in a position where they're able to get out there and make a change. I accept that. And if this is you, then I'm not criticizing you. Your limitations are valid, and that should be recognized as such. I think we have to accept that content won't save the world, or change enough minds for it to make a difference, especially when it can only be truly heard within echo chambers. There's a time for talk, and there's a time for action, and we are way past the time for talk now. But just look at all this garbage in the world. How am I supposed to clean it up? How can I possibly fix injustice, climate change, hunger, poverty, genocide, human rights violations, and all the other things which require effort from multiple governments around the world to fix? Well, you can't. I mean, you can vote, sure, but chances are that you're not going to fix these things with a vote, and you're not going to fix it with a post online, regardless of how many people see it. By the way, I'm not saying you shouldn't vote, by the way, you absolutely should, but if we're being realistic, then voting is a very long-term solution to these issues. Okay, look. What I think is that you, me, and everyone else who's able to do and should do is take action and make things better for other people, even if it's just in the tiniest of ways on the tiniest of levels. I live in a large city, and practically every time I drive somewhere, I see someone on the side of the road asking for money. They have no home, no food, and more than likely no place to sleep. Now, even though I generally pay for everything with my card, I always keep physical money in my wallet for the sole purpose of giving it to people who need it. My wife and I aren't exactly wealthy by any means, so we're not in a position where we can hand out $20 bills every time we need to pick up some eggs, but it's something. Now, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but the reason I started doing this is because I couldn't bear to see how unhoused people were treated by the general public. They're either treated terribly by some arsehole in a luxury car, or the cops get called to take them away because they're bringing down the vibe near the 7-Eleven. When I was in the UK recently, I saw an unhoused person on the high street, and right there next to him was a woman who was just talking to him. I wasn't able to eavesdrop much, but she asked him how he was, if he had any health issues, and if he had somewhere to stay that night. I may have helped out a couple of people by giving them a few dollars to buy some food, but it made what I do seem so half-hearted by comparison. I don't know what came of that conversation, but this beautiful small gesture of showing compassion towards a human being who desperately really needed it really resonated with me. When I looked at my feeds online later that day and saw dozens of people arguing about some politics and talking about what could be done to fix things and who's to blame while sharing links of different articles to back up what they're saying, it all just felt very small compared to that one woman asking another human being whether they were okay and if they needed help. I think that's what we need more of. I don't think people should put on blinders and completely ignore what's happening in the world, but I do think we need to rethink what counts as positive change. The world is in such a horrible state, and the worse it gets, the more ineffectual we feel. Think of the world like it's a vase. It drops once, but it doesn't look so bad, so you glue it back together, but it keeps getting knocked down over and over again, and each time it becomes harder to fix. So eventually you stop fixing it and spend your time looking for someone to blame, figuring out why they keep smashing it and whether there's any feasible way for it to be fixed again. Words are air, they won't fix the vase. So the first step to making things better for other people and ourselves is accepting that we as regular people are limited in what we can do. And we should accept that posting online about how things are going wrong and how they can be fixed is largely a placebo. If we want to help and make some truly positive, meaningful changes, then that means taking action. Help people in need, even if that's a friend or a family member. Go the extra mile and look up organizations that help those in need, like food banks and those in need of shelter. Research charities and donate to the ones in need of your help. Lend a stranger your ear when they're looking sad. Do something to make someone you love happy. Ask people if they need help. Try to get your loved ones involved in volunteering. Lend striking workers your support. Just anything that can make a tangible difference in another human being's life when they really need it. We like to look at our countries and their people and conclude that they're full of evil, vindictive people who only care about themselves and are so desperate to prosper that they'll willingly ruin the lives of innocent people to achieve those goals. I won't deny that those people do exist, not in massive numbers like many are led to believe, but they're around and they might even be living next door to you. If these people are intent on ruining the world, then it's up to us to make it better in some way, to show compassion towards fellow human beings who feel as though they've been abandoned and neglected, to demonstrate to those few who are happy to let evil win that they're wrong, not just with your words, but with your actions. I get why you feel like giving up. The times we're living in are absolutely exhausting, and I've grown tired of hearing and talking about selfish, power-hungry monsters that are hell-bent on making everything worse under the guise of fixing things. They say they'll fix the vase, but all they do is toss the shards into the trash and start punishing people for a crime they're innocent of. Then they'll tell their supporters that now all the bad people are gone, everything will work out fine, even though the vase is now gone. I'm really running with this vase analogy. I think that deep down, you're also tired of all the talking and you want something to be done. Would I like drastic change? Absolutely. I have to accept that it's not going to happen anytime soon though, and even the biggest names on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, or elsewhere are completely incapable of making meaningful changes to the world at large. They're just people on the internet, and even phony philanthropy that gets tens of millions of views isn't enough to inspire change, regardless of how many free homes they give to delivery drivers who definitely won't be able to afford the property taxes on them. Mr. Beast, with your phony smile, please, whenever you get the chance, do a little good. It may seem pointless in the grand scheme of things, but if you can't make change on the macro level, you can at the very least try to change things on the micro level. It's worth making someone else's life better, even if they're a complete stranger. Kindness can be infectious, and that person that you helped might go on to help someone else. The world is unbearably harsh, even at the best of times, and kindness requires more effort than anger or indifference, but it's totally worth it. Things will get better in time. History has taught us that society as a whole veers towards more progressive ideals in the long run. It's hard to be patient while the world is falling apart, but it's still worth helping those in need in the meantime. If we're being real, like really real, then things will start improving once the boomers start dying off. I don't feel great saying that, but there is truth to it. They're the most active votes in the world, despite millennials being the largest voting bloc in history, but it's difficult for younger people to get out there and vote for change when their leadership options are so terrible and they barely have any free time thanks to all the overly demanding employers out there. Not all boomers are bad, but A lot of them really pine for the good old days a bit too much, and politicians love to sell that to them. No disrespect to your parents or grandparents, but once they're out of the equation, we might actually be able to get some stuff done. And to the boomers in my life who are watching this, I'm not referring to you, and I hope you live forever. The world will get better, even if it doesn't feel like it will, but we can't just wait for it while there's so much left to be done. If you have other suggestions for ways in which people can help, then please leave them in the comments for others to see. But in the meantime, take care and be kind. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to do the like, do the sub, and do the comment so you can give the algorithm some delicious, succulent engagement. Ooh. Thanks to all the people on Patreon who support the channel you can see here, with a special thanks to the following: Sabor David, Freya Law, Quesadilla, Charlie, Rima, Rowan Ellis, Honey Lioness, Femgirl Aaron, MD Bagel, Minty, Malcontent, Zoe B, Fishcatch, Cuba XR, Mick, Jonathan Morris, Aria Rose, Bailey Grevling, Catherine Pandel, Remy Allen, Grants B, Mergerger Fashionable, Alina, R. Atoms, Sparrowwagon, The Deer Prince, Syndrome Noir, Tadeo de Oria, El Salvador Dali, Ryan Osterman, Jay, Cami, Catherine, Nadine, Something Goofy, Carlin, Gina I, David, Jared S., Alexandra Vanka, Vertex, Emily Argentine, The Paultism, Haplo, Tandy, Locked In, Boring AF, Kev U, Velox, Patrick Giuseppe, Gertz Weinreich, Selin, and Sumi. Thanks so much for your support. If you want to help out as well, then please visit patreon.com/Salari or with one-time donations via Coffee or Buy Me a Coffee. Links below. Sorry for the long break between new videos, but there's a new one coming out soon, and I promise it'll be way more lighthearted. Chat with me at twitch.tv/JSalari every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, or join my Discord to connect with others. Thanks again, don't give up, and take care.